Welcome, everyone. Ready to explore some really profound ideas. Because today on the deep dive, we're tackling something truly unique.
We are indeed.
We're digging into session 56 of the Law of One Material. We know many of you are interested in this, so we're excited to, unpack it together.
That's right. And for anyone maybe newer to this, the Law of One comes from a series of channeled conversations with an entity called Ra.
Right.
And it explores some pretty deep metaphysical concepts. It's definitely not your everyday reading material, but it's packed with intriguing stuff.
Absolutely. And our mission today, yours and ours, is basically to walk through this single session, session 56, almost line by line, question by question.
Yeah, to really pull out the core ideas and understand what's being said.
Exactly. We want to get the maximum insight for you. So session 56, it happened June 8th, 1981. It's this ongoing chat between the questioner and Ra.
And we're going to look at each question, Ra's answer, and then, discuss what it all might mean, really get into the substance.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The very first question, 56.1, it's about the channel, the instrument. How are they doing?
And Moran's answer is pretty direct. It kind of sets a serious tone. They say the instrument is, and I'm quoting here, severely distorted towards weakness of the mental and physical complexes at this time,
Wow.
and is under psychic attack due to this opportunity.
Okay, hold on. Severely weakened and under psychic attack. Just because of the contact itself, that's intense.
It really highlights the potential energetic toll, doesn't it? It suggests this kind of communication isn't maybe always easy or without cost.
Yeah.
And this idea of psychic attack, well, you could interpret it as a kind of resistance, maybe. Negative energy arising because valuable information is coming through.
So the weakness means we should maybe consider the info comes through that filter, and the attack suggests the info is seen as important, or maybe threatening to some forces.
Potentially both. It definitely adds a layer of context to the whole session. It makes you appreciate the effort involved, for sure.
It really does. So naturally, the questioner's next question, 56.2, is basically, should we stop, given how the instrument is feeling?
And Ro's response is, I think, really key to their philosophy. They say, this is entirely at your discretion. Complete respect for free will.
No pressure either way.
None. They do acknowledge the instrument has some energy, transferred energy, but they say it's not great because of those difficulties mentioned.
But then they add something significant, right? They offer protection.
Yes. We shall safeguard the instrument should your lines of inquiry continue. That's a major commitment.
It really is. What does that safeguarding likely entail, do you think, energetically speaking?
Well, it's hard to say precisely, but it implies an active energetic shielding or buffering, maybe, protecting the instrument from that psychic attack or undue strain. It shows a deep sense of responsibility.
And they trust the questioner's judgment, too, mentioning their awareness of the parameters. It feels like a partnership.
Exactly. It's this balance, isn't it? The drive for knowledge versus the well-being of the person making it possible. A very careful, ethical line.
Okay, so context established. The instrument is weak but protected, and the session continues. Then, 56.3, the questioner shifts gears completely. They ask how the pyramid shape works, specifically Giza.
And Ra's answer immediately flips the script. This is crucial for you listening. Ra says, in reality, the pyramid shape does no work. It does not work.
Wait, what? It doesn't work, after all the mystique.
Well, not in the sense of generating energy itself. That's the key. Ra says it's an arrangement for the centralization as well as the diffraction of the spiraling upward light energy.
Ah, okay, so it's not a power plant. It's more like a lens or a funnel for this existing energy.
Exactly. A tool to interact with something already present, this spiraling upward light energy.
Let's unpack that phrase, spiraling upward light energy,
What is that?
according to Ra.
They explain that light, or what we might call prana, or life force, naturally moves in spirals. And this movement affects our own magnetic fields, the energy fields around us.
Okay.
So certain shapes, like the pyramid, act as, Ra uses the analogy of an echo chamber or an intensifier for the spiraling prana. Prana being, the basic life energy, the distortion of the infinite creator.
So the pyramid shape resonates with this energy, concentrates it, makes it stronger within that space.
Precisely. It focuses this fundamental spiraling movement of energy.
Which would mean that different parts of the pyramid, like the chambers, probably have specific roles in how they interact with this focused energy. Ra mentions the Queen's chamber first.
Yes. The Queen's chamber position is described as being for intensifying the need for the person inside to use their own will, to call up their inner light to match the intensified energy around them.
So it's like a catalyst for inner work.
Exactly. Ra calls it the initiatory place and the place of resurrection. It's not passive. You have to actively engage your will to work with the amplified energy. It's for profound inner shifts.
Wow. Okay, then there's this other place mentioned, an offset place used for healing. How does that work differently?
Ra says this spot functions by interrupting the entity's normal energy flow. They call it interrupting the vibratory magnetic nexi in their normal flux.
So disrupting your usual energy patterns, like hitting a reset button.
Kind of, yeah. It creates what Ra calls a possibility-probability vortex, a space where old patterns are broken, allowing for a new beginning and potentially a less distorted, more healed energy configuration.
But Ross stresses that it's not just the location. You need a healer and a crystal, and they play a vital role. Why?
Because this power of interruption needs control. It needs incarnate intelligence, which is the healer's conscious awareness and skill.
What kind of skill?
The ability to see energy patterns, the distortions, the weaknesses, but without judging them, just observing. Then, using their intention, often aided by a crystal as a focus point, they can visualize the person in a healed state, guiding the energy towards that pattern.
So it's definitely not just about lying there. It's an active, guided process.
Yeah.
Really emphasizes the importance of a qualified practitioner.
Absolutely. And clear, positive intention. Which leads to the next point Ra makes.
Right, about other shapes, not just pyramids.
Exactly. Arches, vaults, cones like teepees, even rounded caves. Ra says these can also intensify that spiraling light energy. It suggests this principle isn't limited to just Egyptian pyramids.
Which makes you wonder if ancient builders everywhere kind of tapped into this understanding, consciously or not.
It certainly seems plausible, like an intuitive grasp of sacred geometry and its effect on energy.
But then Ra gives a pretty strong warning. These shapes can be dangerous if misused.
Yes, a very important caution for anyone exploring this. Improper placement within the shape, wrong intentions, or, crucially, the lack of a crystallized being, a skilled and stable channel for healing, can actually make things worse for sensitive individuals. It can increase distortion.
So it requires respect, knowledge, and the right state of being to work with these energies safely. It's not trivial.
Not at all. And Ra contrasts this with typical modern buildings, the square ones, which they say don't concentrate power in the same way.
And that spiritual seekers often gravitate towards rounded, arched, peaked forms. Maybe feeling that connection to the creator's power, as Ra puts it.
It suggests an inherent, maybe subconscious pull towards forms that resonate with these deeper energetic principles. Fascinating stuff.
Okay, so building on this, the questioner asks about specifics in 56.4. What's the best apex angle for a pyramid if you're using it for healing? They want maximum efficiency.
Ra gives a specific number, approximately 76 degrees, 18 minutes. They say this was found useful by Ra's group for healing work, assuming the pyramid is large enough for someone to be in that offset position.
Approximately 76 degrees.
Yes.
But they add a caveat, right?
Yes, very important. The angle might need adjustment based on the exact position and, significantly, the healer's ability to discern the specific distortions in the person being healed.
So it's not just a fixed formula. The healer's sensitivity and skill are part of tuning it correctly.
Precisely. It's interactive. And Ra also mentions that other groups, other social memory complexes, used different angles. But their purpose was different, maybe learning or information gathering, not specifically healing.
That's interesting. Different angles for different functions. It implies a real science behind this.
A very sophisticated understanding of how geometry shapes energy for specific outcomes.
And what about those rounded shapes like cones or silos?
Yeah.
How does the energy move in them compared to a pyramid with corners?
Ra says in those rounded forms, the healing energy follows a more general circular pattern. It's influenced by the overall dimensions and the apex angle, but it lacks the specific channeling effect of the corners, a different kind of flow.
Okay, different shapes, different flows, different angles for different purposes. It's intricate. Very. So next, in 56.5, the questioner describes their own intuitive hit about the energy flow in Giza. They imagine energy spreading out in the king's chamber, like a spectrum, red to violet, then refocusing in the queen's chamber, aligning with energy centers for healing. And they ask Ra, basically, is this right?
And Ra's response is simple. This statement may be corrected.
Uh-oh. So the intuition wasn't quite accurate. Then 56.6 is just the questioner asking, okay, please correct me.
Right. And Ra's correction is key to understanding the Giza model according to them. They say the spiraling energy actually begins to diffuse at the king's chamber position.
Diffuse, not spread out into a spectrum.
Correct. While the spirals intersect and move up towards the apex, Ra mentions a double spiral fashion. The strength of the color values actually lessens. It gets weaker but more diffused as it goes higher.
Weaker colors, but more diffused energy. And that's what's useful for healing, not the strong spectrum.
Apparently so, according to Ra. This diffused energy with weaker color resolution near the peak is what they identify as useful for healing work.
That is counterintuitive. And where does the Queen's Chamber fit in this corrected picture?
Ra clarifies the king's chamber is the first spiral after the centered beginning through the queen's chamber position. So, the queen's chamber is ground zero. That's where the energy is centered and strongest.
Got it. Strongest and centered in the Queen's Chamber, then it starts diffusing as it passes the King's Chamber position on its way up.
Exactly. And Ra even gives an angle for this diffusion relative to the pyramid's own angle. It's narrower, maybe between 33 and 54 degrees. And interestingly, they say it varies with planetary rhythms.
Planetary rhythms. So cosmic influences affect the energy flow inside the pyramid.
That's what's implied. A connection between the structure and larger celestial cycles.
Okay, the questioner tries one more time to pin down this diffusion angle in 56.7. They assume the angle starts at the bottom of the Queen's Chamber, and half of it goes through the King's Chamber. Is this correct?
Ra confirms one part, but corrects another. They say, yes, half the angle passing through the king's chamber position is correct, but it's incorrect to think the angle starts at the queen's chamber foundation. Ra says it actually begins lower down, somewhere between the queen's chamber and that offset resonating chamber used for healing.
Even more complex. So the origin point of this diffusion angle is variable, lower down, influenced by planetary magnetic fluxes.
Exactly. Planetary magnetic fluxes. But Ra adds an important clarification.
Which is?
Regardless of where that angle starts, the king's chamber is positioned specifically to intersect the strongest part of that main energy spiral.
Ah, okay. So its placement is deliberate to catch the peak energy flow.
Yes. And they reiterate again. The spiraling energy is always centered and strongest as it passes through the queen's chamber. That remains the focal point.
Queen's Chamber, strongest, centered source. King's Chamber intersects that strong spiral as it begins to diffuse upwards. Diffusion angle origin expues variable lower down. Got it. Makes more sense now.
It paints a picture of a very dynamic and precisely engineered energetic system.
Definitely. Okay, so the final question of the session, 56.8, loops back to the very beginning. The questioner asks, essentially, is there anything else we can do for the instrument's comfort or to help the contact?
And Ra's response is quite calming, quite reassuring. They simply say, all is well, my friends.
Just all is well.
Yeah. They acknowledge the awareness of the instrument's limitations is good, but they affirm that the alignments are excellent. It's a gentle closing.
A nice way to end that intense session.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into session 56, what are the big takeaways for you, the aha moments?
Well, for me, the idea that the pyramid isn't the source, but a shaper of existing spiraling energy that's huge.
Yeah.
It changes how you think about sacred sites.
Yeah, that really stuck with me too.
And the distinct roles, Queen's Chamber for initiation and will, the offset place for healing through interruption, the King's Chamber dealing with diffusion, it's so specific.
Right. And the diffused energy being key for healing, not necessarily the strongest raw power. That was surprising.
It was. And also, the constant emphasis on intention, the skill and state of the healer or practitioner, that it's not automatic. Misuse is possible. That's a crucial piece of wisdom, I think.
Absolutely. It's not just about the place. It's about the person in the place and their intention. So this session really gives you, the listener, a unique framework for thinking about energy, geometry, consciousness.
And maybe even history, you know? Why were these structures built? What understanding did they have?
So here's a final thought for you to maybe ponder on your own. How aware are you of the energies in different spaces you inhabit, or the energy of different shapes?
And perhaps more importantly, how consciously do you use your own intention, that incarnate intelligence Ram mentioned? Could focusing your will, like the initiate in the Queen's Chamber, unlock something within you?
Lots to think about there. This deep dive into session 56 certainly gives us a rich perspective on the unseen forces potentially shaping our reality.
It really does. A reminder of the complexity and wonder just beneath the surface.
Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration. It's been fascinating digging into this together.
Indeed. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite creator. Go in love and light.